was handled in the right way. So 8.1 CRL update. So Pat Brocky, John Knight, Mark Lambert, welcome, and all yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Good to be here again. In terms of the project works, I've just got the one slide. It's probably an indication of progress on the project, I hope. But the station construction and installation works are largely complete, as mentioned there. We're down to about 250 people on site now across the 3 stations. And a large part of what those workers are doing now is with the what we call snags and defects on site. They can be minor defects, they can be larger than minor. Some of it could just be, as an example, it could just be some painting that has to be done for some marks, to something more fundamental, which could be, for example, a design change or some additional small scope. But largely, it's most of the snagging and defect work that the workers are focusing on now is mostly of a minor nature. We're at the point, though, where we're prioritising that work, particularly for those defects or snags that could be a factor when we complete the project and hand it over to my friends to the right from Kiwirail and AT. So those are snags or defects that could be, for example, relevant from a health and safety point of view or operational perspective. With the completion of the physical works and also the urban realm around the stations, our targeted hardship fund is winding down. We're expecting that will close at the end of March, 31 March, with all applications, perhaps bar one, being processed at that point, and we have advised businesses of that closure, the businesses that have been actively using the fund. So that marks an important milestone for the project. Test train running continues, so over 18,000 kilometres. It's gone very well. That includes the timetable testing, and we've got some additional critical timetable testing coming up in April, which Mark and John will talk about. The key work that we're doing on the project at the moment is the integration of our station systems, and that's been going on for a while. As you might recall, when I last spoke, we had completed testing the individual systems, as building management systems, lighting, communication and so on. And then more recently, we've been testing them all together, so the integration of those systems. And that's important that they work well together, and that if we have a situation where we need 3, 4 systems working in parallel, that they do so, and that's through what we call our integrated control system. So that testing continues. It's hard. So whilst we might be, if I quoted a number, 96% of the way through our systems testing, this last few percent are really critical and they're difficult. And they're proving to be that way, but again, it wasn't unexpected. When we complete the integrated systems testing in early April, we then move to our trial operations where AT and AOR play a key role in running stations and the trains with Kiwirail's help. That also includes our emergency systems testing. So that's running various scenarios in the emergency systems, working very closely with St John's Police and Fire Emergency Services. We have 11 live exercises that we undertake during the emergency testing. As an example, just to make it real, we'll simulate fire in the stations, fire on the trains, train collision. And for that emergency testing I would have touched on last time, and I remember the Deputy Mayor offered to help us with our live passengers, or our proxy passengers as we call them. We're now up to, we require 1,600 for the testing over the April-May period. We're up to 1,300. So Deputy Mayor, I appreciate your offer, but we may not need to call on it, but it was very kind of you to offer at the last meeting. Maybe that's given a little bit of encouragement too, so thank you. But those volunteers will be during the week and also weekends, but that's going pretty well. Tapping in to those volunteers from Auckland Transport, Key Rail, Auckland One Rail, our own organisation. And then finally, we have a continued focus on what we call the paper mountain within the project. There's a lot of documentation must be prepared. We document all the testing that we do, and then it's the preparation of key submissions for Auckland Council. As one that's very, very important for us is a code of compliance certification of the 3 stations. We're hoping, Link Alliance, our main contractor, are hoping to make submissions to Council in the early part of May, with approvals in June. I've said this before, but the relationship with Council's regulatory team is excellent. It's been very supportive, and that continues to be the case. We had a meeting just last week that myself and Barry were at, and again, that relationship and collaboration between Council and the Link Alliance teams preparing the documentation has continued to be very positive and constructive. So we hope that will go well, but there is a lot of work involved. It's often overlooked. You look at the construction works, systems testing, but there's paperwork with everything we have to confirm that we have done the testing. That's through paper, not just word of mouth. So a very important part of the project that is still to come in terms of that approval process. But otherwise, works are progressing in a satisfactory manner. But again, we're at a very critical stage. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, councillors. I've just got a few slides to summarise where we're at on operations readiness. This first slide, as Pat has said, testing and commissioning of the stations is progressing well, both at the individual station systems level, but also between and across CRL stations, but also between legacy systems and the new CRL systems as well. Familiarisation of staff, both in AOR and Downer, our maintainer, is underway in preparation for those trial operations that Pat mentioned in April as well. As we approach day one, just wanted to highlight some of the opportunities that we're looking to implement on day one in response to the CRL station designs. So there's the commercial opportunities which are progressing, and that will obviously offer some revenue to support ongoing operating costs when it opens. The design of the stations have created advertising space. So there's around 25 opportunities for digital screens and some static screens. The digital screens are currently being manufactured by our out-of-home media supplier, MediaWorks. And we've also, through the design work, identified future opportunities as well, which MediaWorks will continue post day one. For example, on the opposite the platforms, there's opportunities for future digital signs when the footfall traffic allows us to, or allowed us MediaWorks to actually get good economic return from additional advertising through the stations. In addition to that, the design has allowed for 6 retail spaces. They're currently in progress and securing leases. And again, we're looking at future opportunities post one for additional retail spaces as well, and a business case is underway for future works around that. Again, when the footfall traffic allows that and makes economic sense. Just an update on the actual timetable and operational testing. As you know, in the second week of Easter holidays, we are looking to undertake further network-wide tests. That covers, again, both the day one service pattern and across network timetable operations, but also looking at the systems tests across both legacy and new CRL systems, such as signalling, train control, customer information, PIDs, etc. As I mentioned at the previous committee, this test is very important. It allows us to identify a soft launch or a graduated launch, which will basically see an improvement in frequencies subject to the test outcome from day one, where we're seeking to go from 20-minute timetable to a 15-minute timetable, or 33% increase, 7 days a week. And overlaying on that, peak services, which initially would be either existing peak services or, in some cases, some improvements, but progressively post day one, as part of that graduated approach, avoiding big bang, identifying options where we increase further services on the south and the west in particular. Just one slide on integration across the public transport network. So bus services are being progressively changed to integrate with rail. Many are already go live through new contracts for bus services. Upcoming changes and improvements, Wellesley Street bus improvements will happen in mid-April with relocation of the bus stops. In the south, bus services were already amended in November with some improvements, and from mid-April we're improving further services with 2 additional frequent routes, and to align with the Drury stations opening middle of the year, we're looking obviously to extend some services to those stations. Then in June, there's further changes to be made to the west services to better integrate with rail and bus, and the final change will happen at CRL opening, where we're ensuring that the timetables fully integrate between rail and bus. John.
Kia ora tātou, Council. Mr Chair, thanks Mark. Just very quickly what I'll do, give you an update on where Kiwi Rail are at regarding the Easter works, and then snap through a quick slideshow. So critical path works are on the eastern line for signals commissioning to enable work at Sylvia Park and Meadowbank to be fully optimised. We're finishing off work in the Henderson and the western line, and we're also working south, the vicinity of Papakura and Manurewa, and that's through the 3rd to the 6th. Drury rail stations, as Mark indicated, we continue with the 2 main stations in Drury and Pairata with enabling works. And as you can see from the slideshow, what we have completed and the ongoing construction focuses now on the internal facilities and dealing with some under-track pipelines and finishing off. And Ngakaroa is really enabling works that's commenced, and they're all on target and working well to plan. Henderson Station upgrade, as I mentioned before, that's going heavy during the 3 through 6 April period, and then by mid-April, it'll be available for timetable testing with a project target date completion of the end of June. Work on that is, as I said, going to plan, and they're actually ahead of schedule slightly, so that's a good news story happening out west for our customers. I just wanted to cover quickly this slide, which shows you an improvement of the asset. This on the left-hand axis, it reflects minutes of delay or disruption to our customers. And on the horizontal axis, it reflects a time chain from January 24 through to the current day, which is the yellow shaded and the bottom right green area of the graph. The lines indicate the disruption caused by the asset to journey time, and as you can see now, the black dotted line that runs horizontally above the blue bar, that's the threshold that we must keep within to run the timetable for CRL day 1. And you can see as we're tracking now, the dotted black line and the blue line is where we are sitting, and we are projected to be, that's as at March, so continuing that downward trend. So this is the message I want to send here to Council, is your investment and the disruption we've made to the people of Auckland is now paying dividend. We can actually run with the reliability of our infrastructure, the timetable. This one here is the projection beyond March. You can look to the right-hand edge again. It's a monthly time chain on the horizontal axis, and on the vertical axis it's delay minutes. You can see we're sitting around 2 minutes 50, which is well below the black dotted line threshold for target to a latter year opening of CRL day 1. A quick summary of where we are with the closures. So basically Easter is a full network shut to enable the final completion of some critical path signal work and commissioning and integration of assets. And the 7th to the 12th is a AT level crossing heavy program. We were able to finish off the level crossing program in the limits as shown in the slide. The 3rd to the 15th, as Mark indicated, is the timetable testing. That's the stress testing of the asset. The timetable, the frequency, the running of trains, the roster patterns and the driver behaviours of the EMU team from AOR. And on the 25th to the 26th, very importantly to remember our servicemen, of which I was one, Anzac Day will be running services for the dawn service, and then we'll assume the network shut after the dawn services to complete other critical path works. Mr. Chair, that's the end of our quick presentation. Happy for questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Can we have some questions? And we've got Julie first.
Kia ora. My question was around the Targeted Hardship Fund, and Patrick, we've talked about this before. Oh, also I should say super excited. That's not a question though. The Targeted Hardship Fund is something I think we can all learn from. It's the first of its kind so far in New Zealand, and I'm really keen that we do some more work with you to learn what worked, what didn't, because we're going to have to probably consider more of this kind of thing. So did you have any initial first reflections you could offer quickly now, and also what would you see as a good process by which we could continue that conversation and make sure we don't lose it as this project winds up? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. On initial observation, I mean, just at a macro level, I think it's been a very good idea. It's been a good facility. I think it's been really important to support the businesses through the disruption that they went through. So valuable in that respect. You know, did it provide all the support that businesses were looking for? Probably it wasn't able to address all ills at that point, but we were doing our best within the facility that we had. I think that obviously businesses faced a number of other headwinds over the last few years. It wasn't just our project, so that was unfortunate in that respect for everybody. We are undertaking a lessons learned across the project, and THF will be an important part of that. I think it's important, as you say, the lessons from that, the learnings from that don't get lost, and we can benefit from that with other projects that could be could impact because they're working in a CBD, for example. So that's lessons learned is a request from the sponsors. We are hoping to have something available before we finish the project. So that THF will definitely be part of that.
Cool. So I'm not trying to be sneaky about trying to find out when the CRL will be open, but if I put down to come back to you, to come back in, say, October, to ask for that report, I'm not trying to be sneaky. Is that a good time to ask for a lessons learned report, or is that too soon?
Well, we're just starting on it now, and I think it has to go through our board, then sponsors, and then eventually be available wider. Okay. But I'm hoping we are able to produce a report for board and sponsors within Q3 of 26.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
Oh, gentlemen. Mr. Knight, starting with you first, if I may. No one's going to be celebrating Henderson Station with 40 million value engineered out. The one question I have is, we lost our bridge to get off the end of the opposite end of the platform. We are building a bridge there which is going to be only for safety, for emergencies, so it's locked. I have learnt that that's because we can't afford turnstiles or to swipe on and off or something. But could we not put just turn gates there so that you can get off the platform and not on? That would at least get hopefully 50% of the commuters into Henderson Square.
Yeah, look, Ken, that's a fair question, and emergency and safety is paramount through that lens. So rather than give you an answer here, what I think we need to do is we need to take that back to the project engineer lead and just see whether that point can be raised as part of the thinking. I'm sure it has been in the thinking. I just haven't got that answer with you. So, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to report back to council, direct to InfoU, direct to councillor, and provide the question, the answer to the question. Is that okay, Ken?
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Mr. Lambert, I'm struggling here to catch up because as I was coming in this morning, I was made aware of the article in the Herald yesterday, which starts by saying commuters on Auckland's West Auckland line will not get more rush hour trains when the CRL opens. I haven't read right through it yet. I know this, we both know that I've been campaigning to you about timetables. You know, this line is the only line that in the legislation is got named points on it for intensification in the whole system, and yet we seem to be going backwards, not forwards, on the service that's going to be offered on this line. Is it, you know, can you say something to that, please?
Happy to say something. As I said, the off-peak services are increasing by 33%, or that's our proposal at the moment, subject to tests, 7 days a week, including on the Western Line. So that's going from the current 20-minute frequencies to the 15-minute frequencies. In addition, as I've said, we're looking at a graduated launch, progressive improvement of services for the peak, and looking to retain existing services, and then over a short period of time thereafter we roll out an improvement in frequency. So again, there will be an improvement in frequency in the peak, our expectation going from 6 trains to 8 trains an hour, i.e. what's that, 10 minutes to 7.5 minutes. So there's absolutely an improvement in frequency proposed for all lines.
But aren't we at 12 now?
No, we're 6 trains an hour coming in from the west.
That's not my recollection of our conversation. Okay. I will be ringing you up for another meeting as quickly as possible.
Happy to have further discussion. It's currently a 10-minute frequency in the peak.
Thank you. I wish I was more prepared for this discussion. Thank you. Sorry. Desley.
Thanks, Chair. Look, yeah, that was one of my questions, so I'll lead off with it. I wasn't going to, but Greater Auckland did a presentation to us where they said that the trial, your trial had shown a decrease, all right, in patronage on that Western Line. So can we get all joined up? Can you contact them and get the clear facts out? They only came to us yesterday as part of the annual plan, and I knew we were seeing you today, and I told them I'd ask that question. So if you could just get us that fact and circle back to Greater Auckland, that would be really good. My other question is, I'll start with Anzac Day, and thanks for opening the line. Thanks for opening the line during the morning till 2 o'clock. That, and then closing it after that. That will need a lot of comms, because the dawn service isn't the only Anzac service in Auckland. In fact, many are 9, 10, 11 a.m. in the morning in the suburbs, as opposed to the main dawn service at the Domain. So I wouldn't want people to have a false sense of the train network is operating to Anzac Day and home again. So just be really careful. I think that's up to all of us as well. Council comms, Auckland Transport comms, everybody. It's going to have to be a clear message that 2 o'clock is the witching hour. My second question to probably Auckland Transport, and I know that we seem to be okay with fuel at the moment, but are we okay with buses during the shutdown of the rail in April, Auckland Transport noting the potential issues around fuel? Are you confident that we'll have, as per normal, a right amount of buses operating during the rail shutdown in April?
Well, firstly, recognising that we accept that customers do not like the rail bus replacements when we're shutting rail, but we have secured rail bus services from our suppliers, including express services which were previously operated over the Christmas block as well. So yes, we have secured those bus services.
And I appreciate some of that as school holidays, which should help commuters, but thank you for that. I'm going to ask a question I seem to ask regularly. Our rail network is comparably absent of advertising to, say, the London Underground, and you've talked about the fact that once it's open, you'll have that media opportunity. Do you have any expectation around what our revenue will be from that? Have you factored that into any budgets? Do you have an expectation?
We have worked this through with MediaWorks, our single supplier for advertising across the whole PT network, and they have taken a market-led approach around the saturation compared with patronage forecasts. So yes, we have considered that revenue, and that's been built into AT's budgets.
I'll leave that last you offline, maybe. And my final question is just sort of an obvious one, and I will reiterate what I've said before that Sydney Metro told us, and I think you were all there when they told us, test, test, test again, and don't open till you've tested for the insert number time to get it right. So what do you think is our biggest risk at this stage of the program for the CRL? In other words, is there a big risk, or are you confident that everything's tickety-boo? And I'm not going to give a time, but other than saying it's the second half of this year, which is the party line, I think, for when it's going to be open. But is there anything that you're worried about, or are you pretty confident that you will meet that time frame to open? There's no big risks.
That's a fair question, Deputy Mayor. There's no single issue that, in terms of the works, that is concerning us. I think, they're just complex works at this point, and it doesn't pay to get too confident about that, because until you get through it, you don't get through it. So it's at a critical point, and then we finish the integrated systems testing in April, and then it's ensuring that it works well through the trial operations and the emergency response testing with AT and Key Rail and Auckland One Rail. It is a bit of a day-by-day thing. You just don't know what can crop up. It's the unknowns that can sometimes come and bite you, and I think that would be the experience offshore as well. So every day you're just, pleased with the testing you're getting through. Sometimes you've got to go back and retest if tests don't succeed. And our key obligation is to hand over to Key Rail and AT a safe and reliable railway. So it's just hard yards from this point. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just think it's a difficult phase of the project, a complex phase, and but there's no single issue that would cause us to have a high level of concern. I think it's just getting through every single test and handing over a safe and reliable railway. And I think second half 26 is still the messaging that we would maintain at this point.
If I could just add, Deputy Mayor, to what Pat said, I think the critical thing is everything we're showing is indicating all of the asset maturity data we have, the analysis we're doing in parallel with the upcoming testing, shows that the systems engineering integration required between a 3.2 kilometre piece of tunnel and an existing network, and the level of investment that's gone into that, and the design, the access shuts that we've had, and the work we've completed is there's no one issue or any issues that are causing us alarm bells or anything at the moment. I think, to your point, and having spoken to my equivalent in Sydney Metro and also into Melbourne and into Brisbane Rail, and with the consultants we have supporting us both with Mark and AT and us in Kiwi Rail, who are from Australia, they reinforce that exact point you made. The testing and the asset smoothing and integration is the critical piece now, and we just have to monitor that and be vigilant. And we feel confident we've done, and the information we've had from people who've observed from outside is saying we have a very good rail network that's ready, subject to the testing and validation, to be open on time.
That's the line I was after. Mark, anything from you?
Nothing other than obviously the trials around the timetable and making sure the existing network is able to support the increase in frequencies.
Thanks, Chair. I'll see you at the sponsors meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. Doe.
Kia ora, Chair, thank you. Just picking up on what Councillor Turner raised about the number of movements from out west. I think a couple of weeks ago I read that in the future, when it's all up and running, I'll be able to jump on a wagon from Swanson and go basically directly out to Monaco using the CRL. And I thought to myself, that's pretty amazing for the West, and most probably amazing for the people out south who want to come and visit people out here. But then, taking up what Ken said, and I've read the complete article, and thank you to Councillor Turner for sending it to me. It worries that we're just not, we're not out west, we are being forgotten about, sort of, we're tagged on. And I suppose my question is about, can you give us a guarantee that once everything is up, and I understand why there is some issue about the number of movements from west after it opens, and there'll be a period of bedding in. But can you give us a guarantee that it'll be more than 6 trains per hour?
I can give a guarantee that that's the target, and that's what we're working on, subject to the tests that we're going to take in April, and rolling that out. But within 6 months is the expectation that we'll be increasing from 6 to 8. And we are testing
From
that in
6
April.
to 8?
Correct.
And then from 8 to what?
Well, that's a good question, and that's what's next beyond CRL. And we are now into talking 5-10 years horizon, and there's more work that will be required to the network, including the level crossing removal and segregation to permit to go above that, because we do need to obviously look at barrier downtimes for the Western Line level crossings. So increasing in frequency, moving beyond CRL, is still subject to those other projects and those capital works.
Just finally, I can't see the Middle East situation sorting itself anytime soon. And that's sort of, I get the feeling it's a sort of forever heartache for whoever side. Given the price of diesel, I drive a diesel, and oil in particular, how's that going to affect what's coming after the opening day of the CRL?
Well, that's exactly why we want to open CRL as soon as we can, because obviously our whole fleet is electric. Absolutely, if we want to improve patronage continually beyond the day one business case, the second phase of the business case for CRL identified 18 trains per hour per direction through the tunnels within 10 years. But we need to be looking at how can we bring that forward, and how can we actually accelerate additional projects around the network to improve those frequencies sooner rather than later.
And finally, my question that I always ask you, when's the opening date?
I think Deputy Mayor confirmed it was the second half of this year.
Okay, Richard.
Kia ora, Chair, thank you. Just on the Western, I know we're asking the same questions, but I did ask, I can't remember if it was you guys or it was definitely the last Transport Committee, are we aiming for 7.5 minutes at peak and 15 minutes off peak? And the answer was yes. So I'm still, could we just reconfirm the actual plan for the Western Line and why that was wrong a month ago? Because I was really concerned that that peak wasn't going to be immediate. So how, it was a month ago that everyone sort of sat here and said, no, the aim is 7.5 every 7.5 minutes.
And absolutely correct, Councillor, with a graduated approach to improving those services. Improving peak, off-peak frequencies to the 4 trains per hour, and the peak starting with a soft graduated launch at existing and increasing as quickly as we can to that improvement of 8.
And you're aiming for all the trains to be 6-car, not any 3 at peak times?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one. The other thing, it would be good for us to see, and I did ask last time, and I know there's so much work going on behind the scenes on comms, and I think it was with the other team that was here, but could we have a bit more of that information that we had pre-CRL start, which included, for the west, it's about 20 minutes faster into Waitemata Station, and I think 30 minutes faster into, obviously, this area, because there's no station right now. It would be good to have, yes, the increase in trains isn't immediate, but you've saved 20 minutes each way. You know, it would be good to start telling people, even with things not being perfect, what the actual benefits are, because we keep saying faster, but actually some of those images we had early on, and even on some of the hoardings around Albert Street and stuff, it said, 20 minutes faster from Henderson, 30 minutes faster from Manukau, that kind of stuff. I just don't see any of that anywhere. Maybe it's around, but I'm pretty connected and I don't see it. So it'd be good to have that again, and including for North Shore residents, because I know getting out of the NX2 into Waihotatu will get you 20 minutes faster to Newmarket and out west and other places. Yeah. The other question, just on and I'm not sure it's your teams, but the Wellesley, it's just a two-pronged question. The Wellesley Street is looking great, but those shelter structures have been up since November. I walk past them from the bus most days. Why were they either put up way before the glass was going to go in, or why hasn't the glass come? I know it's some issue about the contractor doesn't want to have them smashed in the intermeeting time and have to pay for them, but why have we not timed that? Who's responsible for that? And are there any lessons learned? Because for me, it's just frustrating seeing those great new bus stop structures for almost 6 months, but we've had these giant fences around them when, if the structure and the glass came together, we probably could have had those fences down. It says they're coming in finished in a couple of weeks, but is it definitely finished in a couple of weeks? And why were they timed out of sequence? Just feels a bit weird that we've fenced some structures for 6 months for those businesses on Wellesley.
Yeah, and through Chair, let me come back to you on that. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I assume it's to do with the broader works on Wellesley Street and it linking all together, but I'll come back to you.
Cool. And for Barry, I guess I had heard it was due to some agreement we have until sign-off date. The contractor is responsible for any breaks that happen. So I think, even if we'd paid them a little more to get it done earlier or something, I don't know. It's just a bit of a frustration when I can see they're finished but without glass.
Through the Chair, I believe that's correct, that the contractor's worried about vandalism or damage that might happen, and those bits can be, if we're talking about the glass, they can be put in towards the end of the works, which I understand is next month when Wellesley Street's completed.
Okay, Shane.
Thank you, Chair. So we're receiving record bus patronage at the moment because the fuel crisis is deepening and shows no sign of turning around. So I guess my question for you is, what have you done or are planning to do to respond to this changing environment?
The wider team is daily looking at bus service capacity and utilisation and looking at where there's potential opportunities to move resources around and to respond to that. So it is being monitored on a daily basis. Obviously a little bit more difficult to do that with the rail network. The rail network, I think, this week also had its highest day since 2019. So it's certainly going in the right direction, but we're actively looking at capacity and utilisation and where that demand is appearing.
So are you confident with the planned rail closures that the rail replacement buses will have sufficient capacity to, because we've heard reports of buses getting full and people having to wait on the side of the road, and that's not good. So are you looking at capacity for those services?
We are looking at capacity, and as I said earlier, we've secured express bus service replacements as well, which weren't in place at the last closure. So that's an improvement. It is planned, obviously, through the holiday period as well. We are trying to manage that when there's the least demand on the network as well. So yes, we are getting the most buses we can.
So Aucklanders should be confident that they can just access the services that they want to access and use normally. And if there is a rail replacement bus, there will be sufficient capacity for them to do that. Is that correct?
Look, can I guarantee that people will be able to get on the first rail bus replacement that comes along? Not necessarily, because of the changes in demand and etc. Have we put in place the capacity we believe is needed? Yes. We also need to make sure that we do prioritise the works. Otherwise, we will be deferring CRL and potentially other projects such as jury stations, when actually we want to get these improved travel opportunities open to the public as quickly as we possibly can, which will obviously help the situation. So it is a fine balance, and I understand the concern, and we can do our best in terms of the available fleet across the bus network.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Cool. Mike?
Thank you very much. At the last meeting, we were told that the RNR work, which was always framed as getting the network ready for the CRL, had been completed. And yet we are now getting ready for the CRL with other stoppages, other closures. And so the long series of closures caused by RNR, we are told, have come to an end, and therefore RNR has got things ready for the CRL, but now we learn not quite, because it's a second category of closures, also aimed at getting ready for the CRL, and we're looking at closures on half of Anzac Day and the day after, and also over the Easter holiday, and this has been going on for years. May I ask, let's set aside the confusing signalling to the public here, which doesn't instill confidence. After Easter, are there any further closures planned? Could we learn about that, please?
Mr. Chair, Councillor Lee, thank you for your note. Maybe we could take this offline. There was a formal submission written by the Chief Executive to Councillor Lee on his response last time, clarifying the R&R program and the fact that, and clarifying quite rightly, because we took it very seriously at the last meeting for the confusion. So what I'd like to do is refer to that document that was sent to our good councillor, and I'm happy to speak with him offline after the meeting and take him through the separate programs which are now being done, which were never part of R&R, which were always and have been made quite clear in the submission. So I'm happy to take that offline, Mr. Chief.
It would be good to share this information. My letter to Mr. Reddy was a result of a complaint to me by a newspaper editor because the night of the meeting, that night, in which it was announced R&R had been completed, he and his neighbours were kept awake with night work on the rail network. I had no problem with working at night, but it was kind of awkward to explain, especially as the neighbourhood hadn't been told there was going to be major work that night. But anyway, I'm happy to talk. The second question I have is, we heard a comment about it, the work is necessary to get the CRL open on time. Now, last year we were told, when we asked when is the opening date, which is a very reasonable request, given the time and cost that's gone into this project, and given we are now having to defend a 7.9% rates increase, which has been framed due to the costs of operating the CRL. Whether that's fair or not, we'll leave that to one side, but this is a problem we're dealing with. And so I think it's not really confidence building with the councillors, or some of us, and the public, if you can't tell us when the CRL is to be opened. Last year you had a target of a whole year, 2026. Now we're a quarter way into 2026. We still don't have a date or an approximate date. We've got a 6 months target now. And so I don't expect you to divulge what you really know or believe to be the opening date right now, but I urge you, if you want to instill a confidence in the public, especially while we're trying to defend a 7.8% rates increase, which has been framed as due to operating the CRL, you better come back with better information than a 6 month target. That's my advice to you. I have some more questions, Mr. Chair, one more question essentially, and that is the criticism that's coming from Greater Auckland. Now, I don't have anything to do with Greater Auckland, and interestingly enough, over the years, Greater Auckland has actually acted in a role as being very supportive of AT and the, if you like, the transport establishment. However, this criticism about the CRL, about the alleged failure or serious problems with testing, and particularly what they believe is planned for the Western Line, is pretty serious. There's a quote there.
Have you got a, can you get to the question, Mike?
Yeah, I'm getting to the question, but I want to share this. And I think we have to listen to it very carefully, especially you gentlemen, but also we're in there with you with our record rates increase. It is incredible to me that we've spent all this money on the CRL and the Western Line, set to benefit the most from it, will potentially have a worse timetable than it has today. Now, that may be a bit of hyperbole, but essentially it seems to me that the Western Line will not have transformational services in any way at all. And I'll just summarise the critique, and I think it has to be taken seriously.
Yeah, but can you ask, Mike, can you ask the question? Can you move to the question, please, Mike?
Western Line gets only limited direct service extras with potential 10 to 15 minute gaps, and probably the most significant one is minimal real benefits and putting the model over people. And that is a real concern. So what is your response and what are you doing about this criticism? Because it's not going away and it doesn't seem to have any meaningful response from the people who are in charge. That's the question.
Thank you, Councillor. As we committed earlier through Deputy Mayor's question, we will come back and summarise clearly what is proposed for day one and a graduated launch of services and frequency beyond day one. That's the advice we have received from international projects to progressively increase services. As I've said twice today, we are proposing to increase the off-peak services by 33%. And the peak services they're worried about. And the peak services will either have existing frequencies or an improvement in some cases, not necessarily on the Western Line at day one, but in a progressive increase to 8 trains per hour over a short period thereafter as part of a graduated launch.
Well,
this is not...
The idea of RNA and hundreds of millions have gone into it is to have everything ready by day one, and you're telling me, from AT's point of view, presumably, that you ain't going to be ready after 10 years and that you need a graduated period.
We don't need to carry on.
I don't think that's good enough.
Yep. So you've made your point, Mike. We're going to move on, Greg.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, gentlemen. I just want to pick up on perhaps looking forward a bit further. Mark, you touched on, we're talking today about, this coming deadline, but the work continues thereon. And funnily enough, it was Greater Auckland that spoke to us yesterday about another potential project related to rail after the CRL, and that was to do with investigating the line out to Huapai. Right? In previous presentations, we've been left with the impression that there wasn't capacity, really, by Kiwi Rail or others to look at that, but potentially after the CRL opened, that might be able to looked at. So you may be aware that they are telling us, and they may have told you, that they have private investment to go behind some trains out there, that they'll do up the trains and run them for a number of months. I think it was best part of a year from memory. But there's some sort of financial private-public partnership possible model there, from what we understand. So I guess I'd just like to ask, is that something that's likely to be within either the boards, CRLs, or Auckland Transport's thinking as a possible investigation going forward? They also have probably different numbers in terms of what they think it is to get it up and going and operating cost compared to what we've heard about in the past. So I guess ideally facilitating some sort of possible discussion there to see what they've got on the table if capacity is going to be freed up once the CRL opens.
Yeah, look, thanks, Councillor. I might start off and answer that. I think obviously we have there's a limited capital investment program which has now been expensed against the CRL, the heart of the network, and the wider network works to lift the condition of the asset to run CRL when it opens. And that capital program, which was led by Kiwi Rail to actually fix the rest of the network in terms of the infrastructure upgrades, is nearing completion. Drury Rail Station, Southern Power Feed are the last two major projects. And there is a 30-year program business case called the Rail PBC for Auckland, which is aligned to the Auckland Council Unitary Plan on where we think growth is going to occur within Auckland. That project is led by Kiwi Rail and their business case submissions that go to the Crown for capital investment. At this stage, with respect to Huapai, and I've actually met councillors out there about two and a half years ago talking about this very thing, about extending passenger services. So the concept and the information and the talking is not new. In terms of opportunity, I think that it certainly needs to be discussed. At the moment, the way in which the investment capital has gone to bring the Auckland Metro network up to standard under CRL and the current investment program, which is expensed at the end of FY20 or December 26, all of the capital program funding finishes, and we're into a new funding cycle. At this stage, there is no intent to upgrade the infrastructure from Swanson to Huapai. It is not on the plan, but there has been design thinking completed by Kiwi Rail to look at what would be required to upgrade the network in terms of the tracks, the formation and the drainage to extend services. And that's in the form of a model business case in very draft form at the moment. So I think it's a very valid question for the people of Auckland and your constituents out there. And I think that's something that certainly is a takeaway today. It's worth discussing. And I'd be quite happy, Mr. Chair, to take that discussion on with Councillor Direct.
Thank you. We're going to go to those who haven't asked questions yet before we go back for Ken for a second. So, Morris.
Wasn't expecting it. Okay, just two questions. The CRL was jointly announced by Mayor Len Brown and Prime Minister John Key and so on in July of 2013. So this is really for Kiwi Rail. Did you not know from that moment on there was going to need to be a massive upgrade of the existing tracks we have in Auckland, so that when CRL was finally finished, the tunnel and the hole in the ground and the stations around the city, you would need to have those tracks upgraded? Did you not know on that day in 2013 there was that work program going to be ahead of you?
Yeah, Councillor, respectfully, I wasn't in Kira at the time. I'm not trying to deflect the question. That's a very good question. At that time, the national network the asset had been sweated for multiple years. There was no investment. It was a mixed mode freight network. It had no passenger services. They were really making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So that's a big question, right? So that is a capital infrastructure governmental question that's led from the centre, right? And at the time, our asset maturity would have been poor because we were sweating the asset. There were a lot of things, half of life, end of life of type, 50 years for ballast, 25 years for rail, drainage, all of those things are long life assets. Rail and other things are shorter, signalling equipment. So when you look at running a rail network and electrifying it to run commuter services on top of a freight network, that's a massive ask when you have had no investment for multiple years. So did we know about it? We would have known about it. We would have been advised, but it was a huge undertaking, and there would have been a significant amount of capital required to invest that incrementally over successive years. And with health, education, and everything else that needs to be spent in our country, we probably were third or fourth in the pecking order.
Because I guess the follow-on question then is, did you raise that with both the government and the Auckland Council, because it was a dual effort? Did you raise it with them at that point? If you're going to go ahead with this, we're going to have a massive capital investment into the tracks that are not CRL in order for CRL to function? Because I never heard any of that back then. But you may have. I'm just asking, did you?
As I say, I can't, at the time I wasn't here, but I could come back to you, and I'm sure there would have been discussions held by the learned colleagues at that time who are specialists in rail in terms of what engineering requirements were needed to lift the network up to where it needed to be. Because
it's just that I read all the media releases at the time, and there's nothing in there about, on top of this, we are also going to need to do a whole lot of that. And I tell you why I'm asking it, because I'm copying it from a handful of people, because we're not endowed like the West, where Toe lives, with a train set. We don't actually have one. But some people do try to park and ride and use it, and they keep saying to me, why on earth is the delays and the closures going on and on? Why wasn't this track upgraded well before CRL? That's the question I want to be able to answer to people. Why was this not done 2020 or 2019 or 2018 or whatever, so that by the time CRL was ready to go, those tracks were all up and done?
I would say respectfully, Councillor, I think this is a funding capital investment prioritisation question from the government. We're a state, we're an SOE. And I think it's, again, is the allocation of those priorities for lifting a mixed mode or a freight network to be a commuter network, and then what were the priorities of the time. This is 13 years ago, and admittedly you are right, that, and people have a right to ask those questions, and I think it would come down to funding prioritisation and business case development on behalf of KiwiRail, and then what were the government's priorities.
Yeah, I mean, the centrepiece of this for me, having been the Minister of Transport for quite some time, was it raised with us, and was it said, if you're going to go ahead with this phenomenal project in Auckland, we've got a massive capital investment program we need to get underway, and we need to make sure it's finished well in advance, because this coming at the last sort of 11th hour is causing a lot of anger amongst people who want to use the train regularly. It's not on that day, or we're closing it again. And I think Deputy Mayor said some people don't even know which days it is and which it isn't. It's come at the wrong time. I'll leave it at that. But my second question is with regards to paying for something if you don't have it available. KiwiRail's a monopoly, there aren't multiple track providers and so on. When you close these tracks, and you've closed them a lot, do you give a discount to Auckland Transport or the consortium or anything, for you don't have to pay track access on the days it's not open? Or do they just carry on paying track access fees for those days even when there isn't a railway line to use?
Yeah, Councillor, that's built into the annual track access charge in terms of disruption levels of when the network's unavailable or available. One thing I will say to this forum is that we are moving to a partial network closure construct in the future, where we don't shut the entire network, because we've now lifted the asset to a condition of reliability at around 98.2%, which is the average as at today. of that asset in terms of it being reliable and available for to run services. So going forward, we will be going to a partial network shut. So there'll be reduced closures, more trains, and more options for the people. We still need to have partial network closures to conduct maintenance, but it will be nowhere near as invasive as it was, and it will be well forecasted and communicated to the public.
So I really want to get this clear. If the track is open for 12 months of any 1 year, let's go with a particular year when it was completely open the whole time, there's a track access fee that has to be paid to you for the use of your corridor and use. If you somehow then come to another year when it's dramatically been closed all the time, and some weeks and sometimes more than a week, sometimes fortnights, is there something that reduces the amount of payment you get for your track access fee compared to the year when it was fully available?
So at the moment, the Crown is working with Kiwi Rail at the moment under the Metro Rail Operating Model Review, which is value and benefit of rail, in terms of the financial value and benefit it gives to the public. And part of that review is looking at efficiencies, economies of scale, and the contractual agreements around funding. So to answer your question is, yes, it is in the thinking. Is it formally in place at the moment? I can't qualify that. I have to reread the access charge agreement, but I'm happy to do that and come back to council and verify, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, Maggie.
Kia ora. I suppose not a pātai as such, but more of a comment. He whenua Makaurau advocates for increased public transport, particularly in the areas of south and west. From what I've heard today and what we've seen, the upgrades that are proposed here address those. The increased transport and the frequency. So really keen to get that clarification that's been discussed in this room around that frequency. That's really all from me, Chair.
Okay, so we're into people who are asking their second round of question on this report, and that'll be it. If you're not on this report, you can take it elsewhere because you've already had a crack. So short questions, please. And first up, Ken.
Thank you, very short. No, you're after me. Just a quick one from me, please. So looking at all your stuff, the Western Line is being used as a shock absorber to keep frequency frequency inconsistencies on all the rest of the network as level as possible. Is that right? It says here that, and that's not on the report, it says that some of your reporting here has said that even in the long term, the Western Line may see infrequent, irregular timetables varying from 10 to 15 minutes or more. And I saw something there about that was because of accommodating Eastern Line variations. So is the Western Line being used as the shock absorber to the system variations?
I don't quite understand the question, Councillor, but no, we are not prioritising any line over any one other line. It's a whole network approach to provide connections and the best outcomes for all Aucklanders. But at the same time, we need to balance the network services. So
All right.
the answer is no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Julie has cleared the way for you, Mike, to ask a succinct and to the point question on this matter.
It's not a question, it's actually a response. Yes, Kiwi Rail were aware of the need to do foundation work, which later became R&R, and it was mentioned in the 2015-2025 Regional Land Transport Strategy, and I think the Public Transport Management Plan. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chair. The point is there is a comment about there'd been no investment in the Auckland rail network for years and years and years, which is completely wrong. The ARC, ARTA, On-Track, Kiwi Rail has spent a lot of money from at least 2003 onwards, almost continually, to the beginning of the CRL project. So that is not right. The council has been paying $35 million a year from 2010 to at least 2020 for access charges, and that we're now paying close to $100 million a year to Kiwi Rail. So it's not that there hasn't been any work done, nor is it fair and true to say that there's been no money. It's what you guys did with the money in that intervening period, which is the question we should ask. Thank you.
Okay,
Mr.
and
Mr.
no,
Chair,
you don't need to answer that.
I would
Chris?
like to make one point though, just if I could, Mr. Chair.
You can be equally as quick, John.
I will be very quick.
2 minutes.
So just want to clarify between the difference of maintenance and renewing. Maintenance is OPEX, right? So it's constant funding just to keep the asset going. When an asset has got formation that's built in 1870, it needs significant renewals and capital expenditure. So the issue around the funding is, yes, we were funded, but not at the levels required to run a passenger network over a freight network. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Cool. Last question, Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologise that I'm not on resolve, it's frozen and I've tried to reboot 3 times. My question is actually to Barry Potter. Barry, you've helped us enormously, and ultimately this is a transformative project for Auckland. It's big, the largest infrastructure project of its kind in New Zealand. It's complex, it's difficult. Our officers appear before us looking somewhat strained at times, but rather than, I think, everyone having the difficulties in terms of getting their minds around the complexity of this, what my question is what can we learn from this? Have you, as our director who's overseeing this process, looked at a documented record? Because, I mean, this has been decades in the making. Have you commissioned or have you authorised anyone to cover this? And why I say that, it was interesting, Maurice Williamson was asking questions around whether or not some of these matters were anticipated. Pre-Nexus, pre-Resolve, pre-board books, I had the privilege of being on the board of Auckland Transport, and I have kept all those hard pink confidential copies of the minutes and the agendas from that time, which led up to a lot of this. And I have kept them and would be very happy to share them because I think it would provide quite a lot of valuable insight into matters that we are now trying to resolve. But Barry, could you give us some guidance as to whether or not you're having a formal record kept of this that can inform future councils?
Councillor Fletcher, look, it's a really important point. And I'd love to take you up on your offer there. Thank you very much for that. We have commissioned with CRLL a lessons learned exercise that looks from procurement, how that process is run all the way through, how this has gone well and what are the areas that we'd do differently if we were doing this again. It's a really important exercise that, and Pat spoke to that. We'll have input into that process as well. There is a lot to learn from this. It's been an extraordinarily complex project when you think about what has happened coming right up under the city centre on these works to deliver what's going to open later this year is quite something. So the answer is yes. It's a very important activity.
Thank you for that. I'm very pleased to know that there will be a record kept, and I'm happy to share the boxes and boxes of agendas that have been read. The second thing is this is important, and it's important that we have a respectful process for the scrutiny that we now need to involve, but it's also a celebratory time that as a little country, the biggest city in a little country, that we can actually pull together a project of this scale. Is there a way in which we can actually have these briefings in such a way that it's less of an interrogation and more so of a measure of informality? Because I think when I'm listening around the room, and there's people on all sides of the equation, but everyone has their heart in this being a success. So could it be, could there be some further workshops or processes whereby we can come together, and it being less about point scoring or being disrespectful to people asking questions or whatever it might be, because this is the most important thing we are doing. And I would just be grateful for the guidance. And you're a calm and flappable sort of person. What guidance can you give us to make sure that we are acting responsibly in any scrutiny we need to have, but also not vilifying any of the poor staff and officers and things that are coming before us. But it's very dissatisfying to me, as someone who's followed Auckland politics for a long, long time, to see something that is so important coming before us and it's not being done with that team sense, if you like.
I think when the lessons learned exercises are running and it got more mileage behind it, that'd be a well worthwhile workshop opportunity to really be quite open and have a different discussion about this. So that's something that we can pick up with Pat and Mark and John. Look, as we get closer to it, looking forward to when we can take councillors through and actually show you what it's all about. You've been through several times before, but as it gets right to the end and we're looking at just before opening and so forth, what we can do there, I think it'd be a great opportunity for councillors to see it.
One of the reasons I raise this is we're going into an LTP process, and there are other costs, there are other investments that we need to make to really optimise the CRL. So it's really important to me we're bringing all councillors and members of the Haukura together on this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for the report and update. Good to see you all. Thanks for your continued hard work on a reasonably large project. Yeah. Okay, someone would like to move that the report be received. Thank you, Desley. Second. Thanks, Greg. Any discussion? Good. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against, carried. Next item up is the level crossing removal program update.